Hey, I'm not worth it. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Okay, oh, another rejection email. I have to go through this again. You really reach a point where you start dreading the whole process. You need to take a step back to decompress and realize that this isn't personal. This is a numbers game. You only need one yes, and that's it. You're covered.
I really want to pick your brain about this research you did. You spoke about ghosting.
My research was focusing specifically on job rejection and well-being. It pains me to say this, but ghosting is part of job rejections. It really has a big impact. Your self-esteem is going to be shattered probably. If you do these things, I guarantee they will make the process much better, and you really have nothing to lose.
It just works. It just puts you back in control. It's so brilliant.
The first thing and the most important is we all have to start somewhere, and as I always say, practical experience is really important. Even if you're not doing something that's 100% satisfying at the moment, you are learning skills that are useful, and that's going to help you eventually get where you want to get.
Amen. You know? Can we get that in?
I was going to say, can we use that?
No, you're so right, and I think your whole philosophy, like just being direct and just, accumulating skills.
Yeah.
Finding a job is a skill.
Yeah.
It's all so interesting, and like handling rejection, the interview game, just navigating it correctly instead of putting your emotions in and getting so emotionally invested in everything.
It's easy to discuss this when you're being outside and in a protective environment. The challenge is when do you apply it when you're going through rejections, you don't have a job for 2 to 3 months, and you have expenses piling up. That's the challenge, right? So if you are as prepared as you can possibly be before you go into that challenge, if you know already that, yes, I will go through rejections because that happens to everybody. Unless I'm very lucky and I'll get the job offer with my first interview, which rarely happens, but maybe it happens to some people. Unless that's going to happen, you need to be prepared that you are going to go through rejection. There's no way around it. And everyone goes through rejection many times before they find a position. It's normal. So knowing that can really help you prepare and know that, and also knowing that it's not personal, as we're going to discuss later, that it's really nothing personal. It's just there are a million reasons in the background of why someone rejected you, and that's also why feedback is important. That was a big part. Feedback is also important because if someone knows that, hey, it's not because of you, we really liked you, you did amazing in the interview, we would love to have you, but unfortunately someone internal got the position, or unfortunately we decided to shut down the position. If someone knows that, it's totally different game than thinking, sorry, I'm not good enough. I failed the interview, I didn't do well. That's where your self-esteem is impacted. On the other hand, if you have the constructive feedback back, you know what's happening, your self-esteem is going to increase, and that's actually going to help you in next interviews. And that's why constructive feedback and personalized rejection is really important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I did not welcome you to the podcast yet. We started prematurely. So Manos, finally, welcome to Realistic Happiness podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So like you've mentioned previously, you mentioned that job hunting is a skill in itself.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
It is a skill by learning to go through the process, understanding that you are most likely going to get rejected, understanding how to sell yourself properly, which is a big part of the job hunting process. Understanding that you are probably, unless you practice, you are not going to be good at giving interviews in the beginning. Understanding that practical experience is the most important thing aside from education or languages most of the time, unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, but that's the truth of the job market. Everyone has high education nowadays. And companies mostly care about work experience.
And that's a big shift from 10 years ago, for example.
Yes, it is a big shift. Because 10 years ago, having a master's degree was a luxury. You have a master's degree, you're probably going to skip years of practical experience because everyone values that. Now, you have 400 graduates that have the same master's degree as you. You have to differentiate yourself somehow in the job market. You have to do something that's going to set you apart. It's not as simple as having a degree. Okay, I have a master's degree. 400 other people have the same degree as me. it doesn't say anything to the companies anymore. And that's a bad thing for the job market because, again, my master's degree was a luxury in the past. What's going to happen in 5-10 years from now? We're going to need 2 additional languages. Okay, everyone has a master's degree, everyone speaks English fluently, everyone speaks Dutch fluently. We also need a Spanish speaker. We also need German speakers. 10 years from now, you don't have 3 languages, okay, you're already at disadvantage. 30 years from now, you don't have a PhD, perhaps, we don't, you are off. So that's a really bad thing for the job market. And the same things happened with the internships that we were discussing. Now you graduate, you don't have an internship. Well, too bad. There are 100 other people who have done an internship and they're already ahead of you. So you need to be able to play the game of going into the job market and going through this process. And you need to play it well. Otherwise, it's going to take you, the longer you adapt to this process, the longer it's going to take you to find a job.
And why do you think people struggle with playing the game?
People struggle by playing the game because they think that that it's fake. Usually people think that this is fake, that you have to play a performance sometimes. And it's true. Sometimes you have to play a performance, but it's a performance that you need to learn how to play. There's no way around it. And also, I think because people don't initially realize how difficult the job market is, especially if you are an expat coming here. If you are not from the tech sector, of course, we are not touching that field. I'm mostly discussing domains that are around my area. So human resources, marketing, finance, business in general, and specifically talking about expats now because it's easier for Dutch nationals, in my opinion. So if you are an expat, usually you think that, okay, the situation is really well. Everything is going amazing in the job market. So you don't know exactly what is happening until you get here and you realize the job market is not as easy as everyone says. There are not so many abundant opportunities anymore. You have to go through. It's not you're going to land a job on your first interview. You have to go through the rejection. You have to learn how the market operates.
Yeah, and I think it's a protective mechanism, right? That you say to yourself, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Like, I have all the skills. Like, even if you're, I don't know, suddenly laid off or you're in an uncertain kind of situation and you're like, I have a CV. I have some experience.
Yeah.
I'm great.
Yeah.
Like, they will just hire me. But like you said, unfortunately, it's just not the reality. And when you don't prepare and you go into it, you just absolutely panic and freak out. And I don't know, you feel really lost. You don't even know where to begin. So I feel like that's a huge disadvantage, not being ready.
And you also take it personal. That's what not being prepared. You think it's all about you because you think you have everything settled, that you have the skills, you are ready. But then you realize that, okay, it's a difficult process of finding a job. It's not as straightforward as it seems. It's a skill that I have to learn. And when you realize that, before you realize that, you start taking it personally. Okay, it's all me. I am not good enough. Maybe I don't have the skills. No, it doesn't mean that you have no skills or that you are not a valuable professional if you are being rejected. It simply means most of the time that you are not playing the game well enough. And in order to find a job, you need to learn how to play the game of interviewing, how to play the game of selling yourself again, as we discussed before.
Yeah. And the biggest mistake, in my opinion, is that people go in saying or thinking, oh, it's about me.
Yeah.
How well I do in the interview, how I present myself, how great I am. That's a mistake. It's about them. How do you contribute to the company? How do you increase their profits? How do you increase their branding? It's all about them and it's not about you.
Of course, it's not. Again, it's rarely about you. You're just a small piece in a lot of things that are happening. And also, if you make the other person that you are in a conversation with, specifically the hiring manager, if you are able to make them, if you are able to also make it about them, you know how many things you're going to learn from them, that you can contribute this to the company and to the team, what are you going to bring to the table. And if you illustrate your value in a way, as you said, then that of course brings you ahead. And that's exactly what people want to see in the interviews.
So how do I play the game? If I'm listening to you, I'm lost. I'm jobless essentially, and I need to find something. How do I play the game correctly?
The first thing and the most important is if you are applying and you never hear and you never invited for interviews, and if that happens consistently, it probably means either you need to adjust your CV, or you're applying for positions that probably require a lot more experience than you currently have. So if you are never invited back for interviews, the first step that I would do is take a step back and reevaluate my CV. Am I using the correct words? Am I using metrics? Am I illustrating relevant experience correctly? Those are the first things that I would check. And if that's adjusted, you'll probably start being called back for interviews. But if you are never called back, it probably starts with the CV and the motivation letter. So I would reevaluate the information that I put in them.
So I redo my CV. I'm applying to jobs that are relevant, and I'm starting to get interview requests.
Yeah.
Then what's the next game I need to play?
Then the real challenge begins, because aside from the first conversation with the recruiter, afterwards you really need to be on your A game. And how am I on my A game? First, doing my research, researching everything that's available about the position, about the person that's going to interview you, and also about the company. Anything you can illustrate that shows specifically how important this position is, why you want this position, that will make you stand out. They're going to be an added asset. So doing your research, incorporating things that you have read into your interview to show actual excitement about the position, and then illustrating your value, how you can add value to the team, how you can do certain things better. I saw a recent podcast you had about the most common interview question, which is tell me about yourself. And that actually, it always starts from there as well. No one wants to hear personal life stories when they ask you this question. No one wants to know where you went to school, where you grew up. They are not interested in those things. They really want, this is your opportunity to really set the tone for the interview and to give them an opening pitch about yourself and what you can really do. But all of these things, they take practice. So preparing for the interview and learning how to sell your experience, it takes practice. You need to actually prepare. There are some interview questions that are going to be asked 99% of the time. Tell me about you, or what's your biggest weakness, or why should we hire you? There are questions that are always going to be repeated. So practicing those questions and having an answer, and even just say it to the mirror 10 times, it's helpful. But what actually helps is actually saying it in practice. If you go with the mentality, once you start entering the job market, that in the first 3 or 4 interviews, I'm not going to focus on doing my 100% best. Because if you are stressed, it's also difficult. I will go and I'll solely focus on learning how to conduct myself in the interview. So learning how to sell my experience properly, learning how to sound more confident. If you take 1 or 2 interviews to focus solely on that, then actually evaluate, what did I do wrong? Maybe in that answer I would have said it a different way. If you do that, and then go back and also self-reflect and keep practicing, I think it will set you ahead eventually.
I was just thinking of real life, recent examples where I had 2 people that were almost exactly the same with experience, and just how they came across and their motivation was a world of difference. For example, the first person was really, really experienced, and I was really excited to talk to them. But how they were kind of sat like this, and they had a hat like this during the interview, and they were, just mumbling almost. There was no they weren't sitting forward. They weren't like pulling me in or selling their story. And it sounds ridiculous that you have to, kind of practice motivation.
It does.
And excitement.
I understand why someone would say that it sounds ridiculous, but again, when you have, maybe for high-level positions, okay, you don't have 100 people that have your experience, but you're still going to have 10 or 15 or 20. When there are 14 more people who have the same experience, probably the same education as you as well, a decision needs to be made in the end on how you differentiate yourself. Anything that you do that will make you stand out in the interview, it's going to be an added plus. And again, as you said, showing excitement is really important. It doesn't have to be 100% real. let's be honest, everyone knows in the end you want a job, and everyone wants a job, okay? But you can't say that during the interview. It's a performance that you need to learn how to play.
Yeah, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon.
No, that's never going to change. That's never going to change because you can't change some social norms. So that's not changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm just thinking like back to that interview kind of example, and the one who got rejected, and I was trying to be constructive, which we'll talk about constructive rejections and criticism. I was very detailed with the reply, just to say like, yeah, you did kind of slouch, and you know, your whole kind of, you didn't seem like you were enthusiastic or motivated or really wanting the job. It looked like you were just there showing up, just to show up kind of thing. So that's also like expecting your CV to kind of speak for you. You have to actually walk the walk. And yeah, the response I got from this person was not the best, of course, even though I was trying to be constructive. And I said, next time you should, you know, research the company a bit more and actually, you know, show some enthusiasm and ask some questions back, because also this person didn't ask anything, so they didn't look interested. And yeah, this person basically said, I'm a terrible recruiter. I can't see beyond the person, etc. So that was interesting as well. I also got constructive feedback.
It's interesting to hear that, because you actually did exactly what I was mentioning in my research that organizations should do. Constructive feedback, especially after interviews, is very important. So I would give you praise for doing that instead of calling you a bad recruiter. That's and aside from that, I want to stand on something else you said, that again, showing excitement and questions are being asked. That's really important, and I've heard it a lot of times by talking with people who transition into the job market. The unawareness that asking questions is important. It's extremely important. Even if you ask simple things, it shows some more kind of excitement. Now, if you can actually ask questions that are relevant to what you're going to do, and they illustrate how you understand potential challenges, that's going to set you immediately ahead as well. It's the small things that will make you stand out. Like also like sending a thank you email after. Those things are very, very important, because again, you are playing the numbers game, and when you are playing the numbers game, you need to make yourself stand out. You need to make yourself memorable in a way. I remember when I was interviewing for my internship, I sent a thank you email to both my hiring manager at the time and the two team members that I had an interview with. And when I eventually joined, my hiring manager said, I remember how you send us a thank you email. No intern has ever done that when we were interviewing for positions. And I was thinking, okay, it's something that it's the little things that can make you stand out in a positive way, that shows that you really want the position, that you really want to be there.
Yeah, I'm just thinking as well of a funny game that you can play that someone did with me recently. So recruiters and hiring managers at the moment are really into branding, self-branding at the moment. So they are posting a lot on LinkedIn, on blogs, etc. Really giving you information of stuff they want to see, how they're improving their teams, etc. So I recently had an interview, and I was speaking to this woman, and she was like absolutely nailing the interview. And she admitted after 45 minutes, it's meant to be 30, by the way, so we extended. She was so good. And she admitted to me, she said, Daisy, I read your posts about how to nail an interview, and I've done exactly what you said. And I just thought, brilliant.
Well,
really
isn't that very smart, right?
Yeah,
because
so simple.
Daisy is interviewing you, so if you saw what Daisy wants to see, you're probably gonna set yourself up.
But it's so simple, and other recruiters are literally writing very similar things. So just appeal to their better nature. It's so simple. It's like a manual on how to interview with them. But also, like I said, like even VPs of marketing, etc., they're all talking about personal brand and how to be your authentic self, and just explain how they manage their team. Just research, just learn from the person themselves.
I agree 100%. You can do the same with the hiring managers also. You can, sometimes you might be in panel interviews and you're waiting for people to join. You can, for example, do your research, I don't know, about the university that the hiring manager went. Maybe you went to the same university, and then even before you begin, you can start small talk connecting about it, about the small things, which again, they also make you stand out, because people like to be praised. People like it when someone talks about themselves. So the hiring managers also really like that.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. The amount of times I've had, oh, I went to university with this person, and I've
Yeah.
asked another alumni, what do they think? And oh, he's great.
Yeah.
So there's that commonality. And I think that's also important to mention. That's also part of the game. Find commonalities.
Yes.
Not in a creepy way. Don't
Of course.
stalk their Facebook and see like they have a Labrador called Brian and you say, oh, how's Brian during the interview? That would be insane.
Yeah.
But just simple commonalities like professional
Yes.
or hobbies that they actually mention on their LinkedIn, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
It's so important.
Yes.
So talking about your research, I really want to
Yeah.
pick your brain about
Yes.
this research you did. You spoke about ghosting,
Yes.
right? What was the most interesting findings you had from the research about ghosting?
First, and I think it's very important, is that it blew my mind how there was no other research specifically linking job rejection with ghosting, right? Because ghosting comes firstly from interpersonal relationships. And so when we hear about ghosting, we all know what ghosting means in our interpersonal relationship, but what happens when you connect ghosting with job rejection? At the time of writing my thesis and my research, there was only one article under peer review that was discussing ghosting in the workplace, and not even in job rejection, in other matters of the workplace. So unfortunately, and it pains me to say this, but ghosting is part of job rejections, and it happens way often than people think. And I know this from my research, from my personal experience, from conversations I have with other people. It happens very, very often. Unfortunately, it is part of the rejection process. The most interesting thing to me about it's not interesting as a researcher is that it really has a big impact. So my research was focusing specifically on job rejection and well-being / self-esteem. Ghosting has a big impact on candidates' self-esteem. Imagine this scenario that is real, actually, and I have heard it many times. You go through an interview, you go through 2 to 3 rounds of interviews, everything seems to be going well, they seem to love you, you are sure you're going to get an offer, and then suddenly you never hear back. Never. And you've been through this process that might even take a month of interviewing and preparing and mentally preparing yourself that you are going to receive an offer, and then you never hear back. Your self-esteem is going to be shattered probably the first time that happens, until you realize it's something that happens sometimes. Maybe I'll never hear back. Maybe I'll hear back in 2 to 3 months, which is extremely unprofessional, but it happens. So the impact it has on self-esteem is it's bigger than I expected to be. It's something that should be avoided by any way possible by the organizations. And if you are a recruiter, an HR practitioner listening to this podcast, you can take simple steps to eliminate this from the application process. You can, at the very least, ensure that you send an email just saying, sorry, we're not going to move forward. It's not the best way in that case. It's not, but if that's going to help avoiding ghosting, that's really the basic step that you have to take. The basic step that you can take if you are an HR practitioner or a recruiter is to ensure that every candidate hears an update about what's happening, and as soon as possible. Also, there's also another research done in the past that indicates that the latency is important. So if you take longer to reply, it has been linked with organizational attraction. The longer organizations take to reply, there is a risk that organizational attractions will lower towards the organization. So sending a basic communication message back when you are rejecting someone is the baseline that every company should start, in my opinion. And then you can completely avoid ghosting, which is the first step.
And how can I navigate that then? If we know it's a really slow process that companies are addressing this, so how do I navigate this without sabotaging my self-confidence or motivation?
As a candidate?
Yes.
How do you navigate this is first by doing your research again and knowing that this is something that will happen. And when it happens, it's when you're going through this process, it's really important for you to realize that this is something that happens and might happen to everyone. You don't need to take it personally. And it has most probably nothing to do with you as a candidate. It has nothing to do with your skills. It has nothing to do with most probably how you did in the interview. the fact that you didn't get a reply back, it simply means that the organization is doing something wrong that they should address. So it is not about you. And the sooner you realize that this is something that should not be taken personal, and you just try to move on, it will really help you in the long term.
It's how you spend your energy, isn't it? If you spend your energy mourning, grieving that experience, writing a post on LinkedIn saying, oh, this company ghosted me, you could spend that energy applying again, focusing on something new, and like focusing on yourself as well.
Yes.
You've also mentioned to me before the podcast to not make job hunting your universe, right?
Yes.
To not only focus on job hunting, because this is what the issue is, right?
Yes, that's how you actually start to taking things personally, right? Because, and this has been mentioned again many times, sometimes when you're going through the process of applying for jobs, it can feel like an actual job itself, of consistently looking for new postings and applying and creating, adjusting your CV or creating new motivation letters. It can feel like an actual job itself. And it's easy if you are going through rejections, it's very easy to create this chain effect where you are getting rejected, your self-esteem will suffer in the process. And then even if you get an interview, because your self-esteem has suffered, your interview is not going to go well as well, because your self-esteem will be lower. Maybe you'll be negative because you are taking this personally. So, and that's important. And again, it also starts from the organization's point, that knowing how you can break this cycle, knowing how you can break this cycle as well by giving the feedback that we're going to talk later about, constructive feedback, by sending a basic message. You can break the chain cycle that happens and really help the person going through it. But as you asked in the beginning, it is really important, yes, to not make this your full focus. If you are going through rejections and you start to feel stressed, and you go through interviews and you keep getting rejected, and you really start to feel that, hey, I'm not worth it. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. This is where you need to take a step back. Take a few days off. The postings are still going to be there. And also, when you come back, try to focus on other things as well. A lot of people I interviewed, they mentioned about starting to really do other things, connecting more with your family and your close friends, finding a hobby, anything that can keep you occupied. I know it's easy to say this when we are sitting here having a discussion. When you're going through the process, it's much more difficult, but it is really beneficial if you take a step back and do not solely focus on this. Because as we said in the beginning already, selling yourself is an important part of the interview process. And you are never going to be able to sell yourself properly if your self-esteem is lacking, if you are seeing this whole process very negatively. That will show in the interview, and that's going to hurt you as well in the long term.
You're absolutely right. So essentially, the mistake people are making is they're making the job hunting process a job itself, spending too many hours on it because they think they need to be productive in every hour. I need to amend my CV like specifically for this role, write a cover letter specifically for this role, and apply for hundreds of jobs a day, right? And that can exhaust you, burn you out in itself. So then you're not productive, and then you feel negative, and then you hate it. You don't even want to do it. So you procrastinate.
Yes.
And taking rest is productive.
Yes, it is actually productive. Yes. And the dreading part is so real because, and this was mentioned so often, that people would see their emails and they would think, okay, another rejection email. I have to go through this again. So you really reach a point where you start dreading the whole process. And that's the important part, that you need to take a step back, and also you need to take a step back to decompress and realize that this isn't personal. This is a numbers game. Again, you only need one yes, and that's it. You're covered. If you apply to 100 jobs, you only need one yes, and then you don't need to do anything else. So it is a numbers game in the end. You take a break and come back, and it is really nothing personal. It is not about you. There are a lot of things in the background. I will always keep saying this because it is really important. There are a lot of things in the background happening you have no idea about. It doesn't mean that you're not good. It doesn't mean that you cannot find a job that you will like, and a job that you'll be satisfied in the future. And sometimes it also helps to think, and I can say this from my personal experience, that 90% of the times I have been rejected from opportunities I thought were the best for me professionally. I realized that that it was good for me that I didn't go there. So some things happen for a reason sometimes. Maybe you would not thrive in that environment. Maybe this role was not for you in the end. So also trusting the process that eventually it's going to work out, it's really important.
Yeah, wow, you absolutely resonate with me, especially when you have this dream company, dream job kind of facade over your job hunt, right? Like the amount of times I applied for a role, there's a specific like financial company I've just always dreamed about working in, and I applied 2 times and they rejected me, like automatic ones. And I thought I was really like bitter as well, and I thought, oh, but I would fit in, it's so good. And then I saw a few months later that actually it's a very micromanaged kind of position, and I heard about the manager actually like going to your laptop and reading what you're doing, and you have to write a report on what you're doing at the end of the day. So it's like, I was like, whew, thank God I missed that opportunity, because it seemed like the dream.
Yeah, the exact scenario you're describing also happened with me. I also got rejected immediately from an opportunity and a place I thought I would be the best fit there possible. And I was shattered when I got rejected immediately, not even invited for an interview. But then again, after a few months, like you said, I also realized that it's not the place I would have liked to be. So I was happy I was not able to get in.
Yeah, and also it's about, don't put the companies or the job in a pedestal,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And the job description can be as beautiful
Yes.
as it can be, but behind
Yes.
the scenes, like you said, you don't know what's happening.
Yes, you don't know what's happening behind the scenes, and a lot of times the position is not as fancy as it seems on the job description. So you never know what's happening behind the scenes. You need to trust the process. You need to trust in yourself that eventually you will be able to figure out. And again, preparing and understanding that this is a skill that I need to work on. It's going to help you in the end feel better as you start seeing actual results and things start to improve.
Absolutely. And going to constructive criticism then. So like the example I mentioned before, and just another example, recently I spoke with someone who is just interviewing like crazy. He's in sales, so there's a lot of opportunities for him, but getting the same rejection email. So he's presuming that they're using, because it's all different companies, right?
Yeah.
And it's all, our budget for 2024 unfortunately is low, so we will hire you in 2025 if you'd consider it. And he's saying, no, I need a job now. What's wrong with me? What, like, everyone's using the same excuse. It must just be BS, right? So what are your thoughts about receiving constructive criticism versus more fluffy auto-generated replies?
First, maybe I should mention this will be useful. In my research, I was able to categorize the job rejections into 3 different kinds. We have ghosting on one side, then we have generic rejection, which is exactly what you described, receiving a generic message that simply mentions, I'm sorry, will not be proceeding with your application, a message that you have seen probably 100 times before. And then you have the personalized rejection, which we can talk about in a second. But the basic message the basic rejection message, as I said, is the baseline that the company should be starting. So if you are not doing even that, you need to immediately ensure that every single person receives that. And I say it again because, again, it's really important to ensure we eliminate ghosting. Then, if you have the capacity, and I'm being realistic, it will be very easy for me to say that you can give personalized feedback in every application. No, you can't do that. If you are a recruiter that's assigned to 5 job requisitions and you have 200 candidates applying in each, it's impossible to send emails to every single one of them. You can, however, take a small step and say, I will not send a personalized email to every single person. I will do it with the ones that I screened or I interviewed though. That's where you can do it, and there's no excuse to send 10 or 15 extra emails. I think you have the time to do that. It will not take very long. That's where you should do it, because constructive feedback and actually receiving personalized feedback after the job interview is the only kind of the 3 rejections I described that I found in my research that does not have an impact on self-esteem. On the contrary, it may even help increasing self-esteem. Why? Because again, the process might not always be about you. So when you hear the feedback back that you did amazingly, we would really love you, but unfortunately we can't hire you now, the position is frozen, maybe we can hire you in 6 months. Then you realize, okay, it's not about me. I didn't do anything wrong. I was my best self. I did everything properly, but I couldn't get the position now, and that's out of my control. And accept that part also. Sometimes I even heard in my research, people were speaking about actually sometimes receiving practical tips, like you said that you gave to the candidate you rejected. Those things are really important. And I specifically remember someone in my research speaking about how their CV did not have the correct information. It really lacked metrics. And once they received the feedback from an actual recruiter that maybe if you improve your CV in this field, it's going to help you moving forward. And it did help you a lot in the end. So that shows how important it is to really receive feedback, because you really break the chain of candidates going through and thinking it's something wrong with me. And when you break the chain, you really help them to go where they want to go. And if I think you can spare a few minutes to do that as a company, especially if you are a smaller company, you should really try to implement that as soon as possible. And this also is going to help with organizational attraction, right? People do not want to reapply again if they get ghosted. They'll probably never apply again. This specifically, it has been linked in the past that receiving a reply that your information will be kept on file and that you'll be contracted again if there are other opportunities, that it increases organizational attraction in the end. So it is going to benefit you as well as a company if you do this thing. So you're doing two things in one. Firstly, you are increasing your attraction because you set out as a company that doesn't ghost, that has processes in place to notify candidates of everything that's happening during the process. And second, you're going to help candidates go forward, which is really important.
I think sometimes, only sometimes, not usually, just on the person being on the other side, we get some really strange feedback to give to the candidate. And sometimes I just can't bring myself to do it. For example, I had one case where the person did so well. We were so close to hiring them. They were perfect. But the manager knew like this person's boss or something. So it is obviously loopholing and not very legal per se, but it does happen, just FYI. And they said, oh no, this person did X, Y, Z. They're a liar, etc. Like, no. So that at that stage, I don't feel comfortable giving that feedback because it didn't come from me. It's not really, ethical. And they didn't do anything wrong in their interview. It's just what happened in a previous job that someone else said. So navigating as a professional situations like this are really, really tough. And it would be great to be brutally honest. But oh my God, the backlash you'd get, the LinkedIn post you'd get as well. And it just sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? You can't just give feedback like that. Another feedback I received as well was, oh, we interviewed 3 people and this person can start next week. And it wasn't competency based. It was nothing. It was just speed. This person can start. So that, again, that's not constructive. They can't help that they have 1 month, 2 months notice periods.
Yeah, of course, it's not constructive as you said, but if the other 2 people know that, hey, you did really well, you have exactly what we're looking for, we simply decided to go with another candidate that we thought it's just that we thought that their notice period was lower, they could start immediately. We have increased workload at the moment. The simple thing, it's still going to help them a lot.
So on the topic of offers, so like you said, you apply for 100 jobs, you only just need 1 offer, which is an amazing way to look at the whole situation. But your philosophy, we shouldn't just settle for the 1 offer, right?
If you are going through the process before and you receive an offer before you sign an actual contract and everything is set, there's no reason why you should stop interviewing. I think you should always be continuously going through the process, continue interviewing. Some people I've heard, for example, relatively new to the job market, they land an interview and they stop applying without having an offer. Even you should never do that. Even if you have an offer, you should continue applying until you have signed a contract and you are as far as you can be sure that you're going to start. And if you get another offer in the meantime, even better, then you have a choice. You have a choice and you can decide which direction you want to go. And it's the most beautiful point you can be as a candidate when you have one or two choices to go with. And having an offer already is going to really increase your self-esteem so much that it will really show off in the next interviews. And you will notice this if you go through this process, as I have done myself, that once things start going well and you start to really receive the positive feedback and you know you're about to receive an offer, your self-esteem changes so much that you really start attracting a lot more callbacks. Everything seems to be going on its place. Once one interview process goes well, it's a spiral effect and everything starts going well. At least that's what I've seen in my time. So it's very important, again, to remember that you only need one process to go 100% the way you need it. And then you are set, and it's really going to help you. But that doesn't mean you need to stop the moment you get it. You should always be continuing to ensure that you will be on point if something happens. Sometimes you think you are receiving an offer, but the offer will not be coming in the end. It happens. Is it bad? Yes, but it happens. Things happen in the background, again, that are not in our control. So you should never stop. You should always be continuing. And also, I think this is really important during the whole process in general. And it's interesting how a lot of people that I spoke with have also made the connection of thinking that the process of going through a job resembles a lot dating and your personal relationships. Why? Because again, it's the same thing, that you always need to be exploring your options until you are set on where you want to go. Until you are set on where you want to go, you should continuously exploring your options and the best thing that you can do. And also a lot of people made the resemblance that it's the same thing with ghosting as well, that you always want to hear what's happening. You always want the updates. And it is really important to not make the interviewer think that also this is your only choice, but in a way that excels normal confidence. So not to be overconfident, but in a way that you show, even if I don't get this position, I know I have 3 more interviews coming. I know I am wanted. I know I'm valuable. If you can show that in a way during the interview without sounding overconfident, you don't realize it, but it actually helps a lot. It actually helps a lot when you have other things in the background. That's why also you should not stop. It helps you a lot when companies know, even being honest and saying, hey, I know we had the conversation. I am waiting. I just got another offer. I would love to continue with you. Do you have any updates on my application process? And then you are being honest, and you are also showing them that you are wanted, and that if they really want you, they need to move faster. Which, of course, you know that sometimes it's a game changer.
You don't even have to be honest with that. The amount of people who leverage that and have a offer when they don't. We don't have to know. We don't ask you who the company is, how much they're offering you. You can make that up and just create that confidence.
Yes.
And to negotiate your salary as well. That's another game.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Negotiating your salary is a very big game. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different episode with someone else. We're talking all about that. But this is so true. Just even creating that scenario in your head, like, okay, I have a job offer and I'm going to go in and create urgency. It works all of the time.
It works all the time. And I know from personal experience, I can say I had an interview. I already had an offer, and I had an interview expecting a second offer. And I told them during the last interview, they said, okay, next week we're going to let you know. It was Friday. Next week we're going to let you know. And I said, okay, I have another offer, as I said, and I don't want to keep anyone waiting, the same as I wouldn't want to keep you waiting. I would like to hear by Monday or Tuesday at the latest, because I also need to make a decision. And they said, okay, thank you for letting us know, we'll consider. I closed the phone, and 3 to 4 hours later I got an offer the same day.
It's like dark psychology. It works every single time. It doesn't matter if all of the candidates are doing it to me or my colleagues, etc. It just works. It just puts you back in control. It's so brilliant. You are in control again of the process, and you're like, I need this salary. I need to start at this day. You need to let me know soon, because another professional company is waiting for my feedback. So you get that control again. It's amazing.
Of course, all of those things, of course, to do this, you also need the other things to be going well, as we discussed, so that you have already sold yourself, you already illustrated the value that you can add to the company. So you have already sold yourself as a valuable professional that if you don't get me in, someone else will get me in. And that's the best spot to be in. And then if you do that and you also have other things going on, your value increases so much, and that's really a game changer.
Was there anything, Manos, in your research that we haven't touched on that's really important or you would like to explain?
I did touch on the I would like to touch again on the feedback part. We discussed it briefly, but it is the most important thing if you have the capacity and you are a smaller company that you don't get as many applicants as a big corporation would do. If you have the capacity to send personalized feedback, please do it. If you don't have the capacity to do that, please make sure you at least set a basic message and you send it out to candidates that get rejected. And if you want to take that a step forward, you can also personalize that basic message. You don't have to say the same thing that every single company says. We are sorry. Thank you for your application. We are sorry, we'll not be proceeding with you. You can add something different to that so that it will make you stand out in a way. And I don't have examples in my head, but I remember there were one or few times I received emails that were a little different, and it really, even though I was rejected, it made me think that, hey, it's a very clever thing to say instead of just saying, sorry, we are moving forward with someone else. So you can make that small change there. And all of those things that we discussed here today, if they are incorporated, I guarantee that first they're going to increase the attraction towards the organization, because especially receiving personalized feedback, everyone wants that. That's something very positive. And if they have this positive experience, the next time that they see a job, they will apply again. And they will also, and I also focus, not a lot, but I also asked a lot of questions regarding referring other people and that part. So if you do those things properly, you also have a higher chance of them potentially introducing you to someone else as a good employer, and thus getting even more applicants. So if you do that, your organizational attraction will grow, and you know also that that you will not be causing the candidate to have lower self-esteem. You will not be causing them to wonder what's happening, where they're standing in the process. Yeah. So if you do these things, I guarantee they will make the process much better, and you really have nothing to lose.
And if you are the recipient of automated rejections or constructive, be grateful and be graceful.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
How you respond, if you respond to that feedback, like I will always remember that negative person because of how he lashed out at me and said I'm terrible and I did this. It was like a whole paragraph of bullet points that he replied to me, and I'll never forget him, and I probably would never reach out to him again because I'm put off. So accept feedback gracefully as well.
Yes, of course, you need to. That's why it's called constructive feedback. You also need to be able to self-reflect and take the feedback and incorporate it into your next interview. And of course, be graceful, as you said. If you're going to say something bad, it's better to not reply at all. I mean, from the candidate side.
Yes, yeah, totally. And that's your reputation with that company as well. Like, we don't forget. We remember the people who we have amazing interactions with and terrible interactions with. So you stand out either way. So you are building, this is all relates to networking, building connections as well, the humanity of it all as well.
Yes, of course, it's very important. Again, as a recruiter, as an HR practitioner, it's very easy to fall into the loophole as well of just doing everything mechanically and forgetting that there's another person at the end of both lines, right? And that's a really important thing, that, as you said, the humanity is missing. Any small touches that we can add to make this process a little more humane, it's really beneficial for both parties, and they are going to make you stand out if you are a recruiter that gives personalized feedback. And think on the smallest chance that you have across you a person who has no experience with the Dutch market, for example, or with the job market in general. It's the first time interviewing. What if the small tips that you give them are going to help them get a job in the future? That's something really important. What if the small tips you're going to give them to adjust on their CV are going to help them get the next interview? You play the factor and you contribute to someone else potentially landing a job. It's easy to forget that when you are handling 10 recs and you have, 700 candidates as a recruiter. But that's the reality, that you have another person across. And of course, it's the same for you. As a candidate, you have another person across. So be professional at all times. You never know where a single connection is going to take you in the future.
It hasn't happened so often, but the amount of times I've interviewed someone and then at their company, a really cool position comes around and I'm like, shit, I should have kept in contact with that person. They could refer me easily.
Yes, exactly. And referrals are also really important. So just having the connection is really important.
So for some lasting thoughts or impressions for those that are who've listened to all of this and they're ready to handle rejections and play the interview game, is there a final piece of advice that you wish people to know?
I would really focus on the fact that it should not be taken personal. So focus on that. Realize you're playing the numbers game, and don't ever let it, to the best of your ability, don't ever let the rejection game really affect you deep down, like questioning your skills, questioning your worth as a professional. It has nothing to do with you. It's just a skill, like learning how to drive, like learning how to do a research. It's just a skill that you need to work on and practice, and eventually you will get better. As we said, it's also about selling yourself. That's really important. So understanding that, to not let it affect you in any way. Trust that if you work on it, you are going to be fine in the long term, and never settle. Take your breaks when you need to, and then go back at it again.
And if you have one job offer, don't stop there.
Never stop until you have a signed contract.
Perfect. Manos, this was eye-opening. I really, really enjoyed it because it was a different type of topic, the dark side of job rejections, right?
Yeah.
This is what your thesis is called.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like you also interviewed me back as well. I really, really appreciated you coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. The conversation was a blast.